I'm Alex Howard.
And I'm Amanda Silver, and this is Dirty Laundry.
Welcome back to Dirty Laundry. This is the two-parter you have all been waiting for. We left a real cliffhanger last week.
We really did. We talked about the lead up, the sex offenders, the
trafficking.
How where they come from? What causes it?
Yeah.
You know, what are they looking for? And now we're going to turn the page and talk about, well, how do you keep your kids safe? What do you look for?
And how do you keep other kids safe?
And other kids safe as well.
Because we have a social contract and we owe it to one another to support our society, our communities as a whole.
Well, as parents, yes, you're not just looking out for your children, you're looking out for children in general.
Yeah.
Right? And
exactly.
If you see something, say something.
Yes. So Anna is back for part 2 of everything you need to know about grooming.
What is the number one risk factor for becoming targeted by a human trafficker?
It's unsupervised time away from an adult.
I would say a child being neglected.
It's having a childhood history of child sexual abuse.
What?
So when we think about this, when we evaluate, whether it's Epstein or Nassar or any of these sort of cases, by and large, when we're looking at trafficking, we have to remember that these individuals are vulnerable from the jump. And if we do not turn off the faucet at the tap and we keep, getting buckets to try to help in the trafficking world, and we're not really solving the problem at the tap, at the source, then we are going to find ourselves in a situation where, whether it's through online trafficking or in-person trafficking, this situation is going to increase. So the work that we're doing through this conversation today to illuminate the grooming process, have parents feel empowered and prepared to partner with their kids to protect them from predation is critical. It's critical in our pursuit to protect children in childhood, but it's also critical when it comes to things like human trafficking, and even sexual assault in adulthood, because one of the highest risk factors for being sexually assaulted on a college campus or in a date rape situation is having a childhood experience of sexual abuse.
Why don't you share with us the reasons as to why a history of sexual assault would then lead to potentially traffic?
Childhood sexual abuse, childhood sexual trauma can impact individuals for many years to come. There are resources and there are nonprofits, but for many individuals, it decreases their reliance on their own intuition. And it makes it very difficult for them to assess a situation as being safe or unsafe, harmful or protective. What we do know is that when we evaluate these situations, we see that a trend, there can be a pattern of abuses. It can be, there was childhood abuse in my home. I don't know if either of you read the Virginia Guthrie book, but her life as a case study of how abuse in the home, abuse at a very young age, can lay the foundation for a life of further abuses. So we need incredible support to be offered to people who are victimized in childhood, but it often starts with people believing them and listening to them. And whether it's through using the justice system or having opportunities within nonprofits to resolve issues so that that individual can build their self-reliance again. They know that they can trust the environment they're in. Remember, 90% of all childhood sexual abuse is going to occur with somebody known and trusted to the child and to the family. So we're not looking for somebody who's looking creepy in a van down in the ditch. We're looking for somebody whom I would open the door to, whom you would open the door to, somebody who coaches our child, somebody who works in our child's school, someone who goes to our churches and cathedrals and synagogues. So it's extremely important that as we're having this conversation, we think less about there's some sort of monster, and if we can see the monster, then we're all going to be safer. No, this is about building a skill set in not only in parents, but also in kids to say grooming looks a certain way. And when you know what to recognize, you can see it too. So you don't have to rely on I have the right script. Or the thing that drives me crazy whenever I see education around kids and social emotional learning programs that tell a child what's the best advice they give to a child when somebody comes onto them or does something to them. They tell the child, run away, find another adult,
Right.
or say no,
Okay.
or say stop.
Yeah.
We're assuming that a child has agency to change their position.
Right.
A child who's in a school on a campus with no car, maybe they have a phone, but that's not really going to help you.
Yeah.
This child does not have the agency to change their position,
Right.
to run away, to leave campus. Oh, I'm just going to get in my car and use my money to change my scenario.
And that's
abuse.
And there's a power dynamic there too.
Well, I was
There's
going to
a power
say that's by
imbalance
design.
there,
That's
right?
by design.
You, you're
go
the
to
coach or the
go to a trusted adult. The trusted adult is the one who's doing this to me.
Right.
Now where do I go? Now you don't believe me. Nobody believes me. But it's by design. No, you go to school, you listen to the teacher, you sit in class. If the teacher says something that you've done something naughty, you go to the principal's office. Now the principal's in charge. This child, you nailed it. They have no agency, and that's by design. But then when something goes awry, we expect them to advocate, but then we don't believe them. So who in the world are they going to go to? So again, it's this whole idea of, and I like your tap analogy, we got to go straight to the source, right to the beginning, and ensure that we're empowering our children with the knowledge and subsequently the parents. Like, I love that you're talking about what do us as parents have to look out for grooming, because my kids do a lot of activities. I drop them off. I kick them out of the car. I say, see you in 60 minutes.
Yeah.
Godspeed.
You don't think about it.
No.
You don't, they're going
what
to
a privilege that I don't
their
have
dance
to.
class or their or their whatever soccer or whatever that is. You just drop them off and you just hope for the best.
And I think that's why parents like to look to a registry, for example,
so
as we spoke
feel a
of.
bit better. That's
be like,
okay.
I did some due diligence.
Right.
I tried to set my family and my children up for safety. Little do they know the statistics around, what's actually being, what do people are actually being charged for, and what's the oh my God, you know what I mean, the coming forth rate.
Well, right.
And I would say that families go even further by trusting the agencies. I'm not necessarily vetting the teachers who are at my children's schools.
Of course not.
Because you assume
I'm not with my children right now. So some adults, along with youth, are interacting with my children. And I've transitioned the trust, right?
Yeah.
I've transferred trust to this agency or to this sports arena or to this activity to have done their due diligence. And when their due diligence is check a background check, I know, wait a second, we need to be developing a skill set as a family for family wellness, so that no matter where you are and who you're with, you understand what you're looking for, because I'm not going to be able to be with you 24/7. And this is a skill that we're scaffolding. It's not as if we're learning this thing until the age of consent and then, doors swing open and it's a party. No, I want you to have this skill when you're in college and living on university campus for the first time. I want you to have it for your first job, and you have that power imbalance with somebody who maybe controls your hours or who, grazes you a little too closely in the hallways. I want you to have this when you're in your first apartment and you're living on your own. So this awareness of the grooming process is so poignant right now, and it's poignant for the child as they grow and develop.
Can I ask you something, Anna? If, we touched on sexual predators and sort of pedophilia, and then into sex trafficking, and then into adult sexual abuse. My understanding of, let's say, your quote unquote rape is about power, not about sex. Is the same said for a pedophile? I don't even like to use that word, but whatever word is acceptable.
Why can't you use that word?
I don't know, because I feel like you can't use any words anymore. But for argument's sake, that to me speaks to a person's sexual preference. And then when we get into sex trafficking, that to me speaks to dollar signs. Is there a through line? Because there seems to be a through line in terms of the grooming and how these things are so intertwined, but from a motivation of the human at the core of doing this horrible, horrible, heinous crime, is there a similar through line?
Well, I would say that the through line is grooming, and we will get into that in more
Yeah.
depth. I think for people who are curious about that and what is the motivation, the
Yeah.
why behind
Yeah.
these offenders, and what makes a rapist different from a date rapist,
Yeah.
different
Right.
from a child rapist, there's a great nonprofit called ATSA. It used to stand for the Association of the Treatment of Sexual Abusers. They've changed the words recently because of the same idea that we were
Yeah,
just
right,
talking about,
yeah.
sort of muting a bit of this stringency
Or the
around our
The
stigma.
stigma,
language.
so people get help.
Yeah.
Right.
But it is a wonderful clearinghouse for resources and
Okay.
research and information. So if anybody in your audience is really curious about delving in deeply to that, atsa.org is a wonderful resource. Because my focus is so clearly in this prevention
Right.
empowerment
Yeah.
piece, I could care less about what the
fair.
motivation is, because
Fair.
that motivation doesn't protect my daughter. It doesn't
Right.
protect my son.
Yeah.
So I have to be in a position where, knowing what I know, it's changed the lens of the way I lead my
Right.
family, the way that I lead my life, the choices and decisions we make about our children. So it's really critically important that when we're having this conversation, we put the priority where it needs to be, which is
Mm.
that parents should not feel afraid and timid. Predators, on the other hand, should feel afraid and timid.
Right.
Ooh, I
They
like
should be
that.
forewarned that we are outnumbering them. We understand what
Yeah.
they're looking
Yeah.
for, and we know how to recognize them,
I like
because
that.
predators are everywhere, but they're not everyone. And we actually
Mm.
can do our due diligence through some of the techniques that I write about and some of
Yeah.
what we'll discuss today, so that
Love it.
parents feel like, oh, I've got a bit of a spine. I've got
Yeah.
a bit of a
I've got
backbone
some
to walk
armor
into
or
this
some
situation.
tools in my
Yes.
toolbox to protect my family and protect
I
my
love
kids
that.
and not just be a sitting duck.
Good reframe. I appreciate that. I
Right?
live with curiosity,
Yeah.
but great reframe. So
And
with
so-
the sitting duck analogy,
Let's talk about what
let's
that
talk
looks
about
like.
your book.
Grooming. Let's
Yeah.
talk about grooming, duck, duck, groom. Let's talk about the tools that you're giving parents.
Right. So I discovered, having worked with offenders and then starting a family of my own, that most individuals who are on the front lines, might I add, the three of us and all your listeners, we're on the front lines of this protection movement, because it's up to us
Yeah.
to partner with our kids, to have the conversations, to make really important choices about what we allow and don't allow, and then how to handle situations that arise. So I learned really quickly from offenders that grooming is like a perverse form of courtship. So we've all experienced courtship.
Interesting.
Somebody wants to spend time with you. How does courtship normally begin?
Conversation, maybe
Compliments.
compliments, showing interest
Complimentary.
in the other person, in what they're interested in. Obviously, going out, spending time
Interest.
together.
And I think it's the interest
Yeah.
too, taking an interest in their lives,
in what they're interested in.
relating to them.
So courtship always starts off sweet.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear any example in the examples you gave of violence or aggression or rudeness,
No.
right? So it's a process by which we convince the other person, oh, you're really interesting. You're really exceptional. I really like you. I think you're
Yeah.
very fascinating, or
Yeah.
whatnot. And predators steal this. They steal this
Interesting.
courtship. So what I want your listeners to think about is, when you think grooming, think perverse courtship. And what I deduced from listening to those offenders, and then from having the experience raising my own 5 children, that there's a set of stages that grooming goes through. I, as a shorthand, refer to them as the 4 F's of grooming: flattery, favoritism, forbidden fruits, and fear. And the important part about this is that when you recognize something like flattery, my children know that somebody who's really sort of coming on to them, I don't mean coming on in a sexual way, but somebody who's coming on to us as a family, or to me as a mom, to say, wow, your child is so exceptional, or I've never seen somebody who can kick a soccer ball like that, or I'd really like to spend more time with them working on their piano skills, right? These are ways in which my children already have their spidey senses up. and I already have my spidey senses up. Now, you might be thinking, well, if I'm a nice person who, maybe I am an expert pianist and I want to help shape
Right.
this child's life, there is a way to do that
Yeah.
that doesn't come across as showing that this child is being singled out or isolated from peers and other caring adults.
And so what are some actual examples of that? Because you can go down a rabbit hole of like thinking that everyone is out to get your kids, right? And thinking
Yeah.
like just because the coach says your child has talent or a teacher says maybe they need some extra support in something. Like what are the, I guess, surefire things to look out for and the ones that are kind of,
More innocent?
yeah.
Yeah, so I like to talk about two hallmarks of predation, and they are relate and elevate. And I want you to think like here we have a seesaw. I think there, do you call it a teeter-totter?
Teeter-totter,
Yeah.
Yeah. So a teeter-totter works when you have two balanced weights on either side. And what I've noticed and what predators taught me is that they would either elevate, so they're either going to act like the child is a peer. So
Right.
signs that the child has been elevated is that the individual is going to talk to them about their employment woes or their
Right.
financial concerns or their marital problems or their difficulties in their home life with a child, with somebody who is developmentally not suited to be dealing with
right.
adult scenarios.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, that's one thing we used to tell our kids, and not stranger danger, because I actually think most strangers are safe. And I'm like, if you're in trouble, go talk to an adult. But I always used to say, no adult needs a child's help. So if an adult comes up and is like, hey, I've lost my puppy, can you come look for it?
I like
No.
that one.
I'm a
Yeah.
child. I can't help you, adult. Go find another adult and leave me alone. So I'm like, no adult needs the assistance
Of a child
Of a
ever in any
child.
circumstance.
like I couldn't
I
name
can't really
one.
think of one.
So similar, right? Yeah. If they're talking about their money woes, this is not an appropriate relationship for a child to be in. Okay. And then what was the second one you said? Elevate? Oh,
And
relate. Okay.
Yeah. And then when you think about the inverse of that, it's relating. So
Yeah.
it's the individual who's on the gaming platforms with
Right.
minors rather than, being in the game with their adult pals.
Mhm.
Or it's the individual that when I'm throwing a dinner party, they're the ones in the basement with all the kids watching the film rather
interesting.
than being up chatting with the adults.
Interesting.
It's the adult who always sort of has to get in the pool when the boys are in the
Yeah.
pool. It's the adult who's using the vernacular or the common language of the
sure.
kids. They blend in really well. They act like a peer rather than a mentor or an adult who's spending time with a younger child, if that makes sense.
It makes so much sense. And I love that we're talking about this because I am always so grateful when an adult wants to go play with the kids and I don't have to.
That's the thing. You do want,
You
when an
do.
adult takes an interest in your child, whether it be
Yeah.
a family member or a teacher or a coach.
Because we all think our kids are special and we want other people to see
see
how
it.
special and magical they are. But I
Of
think the key
course.
to remember is nobody else's child is as magical as your own. And if adults think that, maybe there's
There's a
something going
problem.
on. But again, like I know so many of my friends that were drawn to careers in education or to run summer camps or daycares or be, an ECE. Like,
Right. So how do you weed those
yeah.
people
How do we
out?
take it to the
Because-
next step? So now we've
Yeah,
got
like I'm a teacher, so I used to teach kindergarten and work with
Right.
children and like get down on the floor and we talked about the things that they
Yeah.
were building.
And
like,
if you don't know their vernacular, you can't
you
connect,
can't
with,
connect
them
with them.
and
then
build
when I taught middle
trust.
school, I had to understand the way they spoke. Like everything
Yeah.
else was bra this and bra that. Like I'm
Yeah.
not bra, but like okay,
Yeah.
I get how you speak.
Yeah.
So it's just
I
like
love
how
this.
do right?
I love
How-
this.
how-
So where
how
do we take it to the next
you-
level?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Let's
Let's go. So to tag on to what has already been said, something that I think is important for parents to remember is that anyone who wants to spend more time with my child than I do
Yeah, that's a red flag.
is curious.
That's curious.
It's curious.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm curious.
That's a nice
But
way
what
to
about
put
the
it.
we're,
teacher?
we're all
No, no,
curious
but-
here.
Yeah.
But what about
I'm
right.
going to lean into that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What I also want to highlight, and this conversation rarely takes this lens or this angle, but I want us to think that simultaneous to the issue of protecting children, we also are talking about protecting adults.
Okay,
When
like
I
this.
go and volunteer on a chaperone overnight trip for a child, or
Yeah.
I go into the school to help out with something, I want to know that the policies that are in place in that environment protect my reputation as well as protecting the children.
So
So
important.
this is not oh, we're only protecting kids and we're out to get the adults.
Yeah.
No, no,
It's
no.
both.
This is actually a both.
Yeah.
This is we are protecting children, and we want adults who are mentors, who are kind, who can, spur curiosity in our children in really great ways. But this is where we go back to those 4 F's of the grooming stages. That favoritism, if you're isolating my child in any way from their peers, if you're only playing with one child in the classroom on the floor and everybody else is ignored, if you're removing my child, let's say in a middle school or adolescent age group, and you're saying, well, I'm going to take you off campus at lunchtime and let you come to my house and have lunch with me.
Yeah.
That's a big
That is
problem.
That's
that's
problematic.
an enormous curiosity that I now
Yes.
have
Yes.
because you've singled out that child.
Yeah.
So that favoritism, flattery in and of itself is not necessarily harmful. But as a warning sign to parents, it might be that if somebody's taking keen interest in my family, the details of my family, where do we live? What's the arrangement? Who's here? Do you have a husband? Is there a man in the house? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? To many people, they think, oh, this is so nice. This person really cares about us. They're really taking a shine to my child. That may be. But if we start to see those additional elements, if we start to see that the child is being isolated, if they're asking for creating secrets, one of the big things that I write about is teaching your kids the difference between secrecy, privacy, and surprise, because those are 3 really dynamic, different components. But predators will always use secrets for harm. That secret is going to be about isolating the child from their caregivers, because you can imagine any time you've had with your kid where they've, shunned information from you. They've said, no, I'm not going to tell you about this thing. It's a secret. That's an enormous opportunity missed. And predators know that children, especially as they enter adolescence, are risk taking. They're pushing against the mores of their culture, their religion, their family system. So a keen predator working in any of these environments will use things like, oh, I'll let you smoke, I'll let you drink, I'll let you use substances. Oh, I know you're so mature, but your parents don't see you as I see you. You're so beautiful. I want to take your picture. Nobody will take the pictures of you like I will. You're really so sexy. Like nobody sees that side of you. These elements, that forbidden fruits, right, that allows children to break rules, ends up, the point of that, why predators do that, is because it increases shame and guilt on the part of the victim. It makes them feel like, oh, well, I took my clothes off. I drank this alcohol. I used these drugs. I looked at this pornography with this person. But what they don't realize is that it's sort of like boiling a frog. You don't boil a frog in hot water. You put a frog in cold water and you gradually increase the temperature.
So this is good because now as parents, we start to look out for those precursors almost. The flattery, the attention, the isolation. And so maybe we'll get it wrong, right? Maybe this is where the adults are not being as protected as the children
in that stage.
In this particular circumstance. However, it's important for parents have those really uncomfortable, difficult conversations. And so you as an expert, what are some kind of openers? Like what are some lines parents can use? Because I think we all want to teeter on being proper and being kind and respectful and, blah, blah, blah. Let's not have these ugly conversations, but I'm saying we need to have them more often. What are some lines that our listeners could use if they find themselves in this pickle?
Yeah. So first and foremost, you want to show up, look up, and speak up.
Ooh.
So if you're not there, sometimes, multiple predators told me if the mom shows up or if a grandparent shows up for that child, I stay away from that kid that day. It's when I know that nobody's watching. Going back to what we said earlier, it's about gaps. Predators are keen observers about gaps, and they fill it, whether it's in attention or time spent. So, one of the things that I encourage parents to do is to highlight or illuminate a situation. So, if I've shown up at, let's take a hockey practice. If
Right.
I've shown up at a hockey practice and I notice, the coach seems to be sitting on the bench next to this one child and putting his hand on his leg or putting
Right.
his hand up around his neck and massaging his back. That's curious.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit there silently
Right.
muted,
Yeah.
observing it and going, oh gosh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
Right.
Instead, I'm going to say, hey, Alex, hey, Amanda, do you notice that the coach is rubbing that player's back and he doesn't seem to be rubbing anybody else's back?
Oh,
He's only rubbing
interesting.
that kid's back. Do you notice that too?
Hmm.
Is that curious to you? That's curious to me.
Power in numbers. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. And you're just
You're
staying
raising
curious.
the alarms. You're raising the alarms that people are afraid. People also, the bystander effect is like someone also
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Not my kid, not my
Yeah,
problem.
well, not my kid. That's what I hear from you is, oh, they're doing it to somebody else's kid, but I'm still going to speak up because now I know these are the things we have to look out for.
It's
So
not just
me
that
as a
one kid.
parent, I'm going to be responsible for my community of children that are in our
Yes.
lives. And I think that's the key too. Yeah, bystander, whatever, not my kid, not my problem. Because we are afraid to step into someone else's home. We don't always know what's going on behind closed doors. But I really like the way that you lead with curiosity. Oh, this is interesting to me. I wonder what's going on there. It's not an accusation. It's not, oh my God, look at this. This is so inappropriate. I'm going to call the coach and I'm going
That
to go do
takes
this.
a lot
and
of self-restraint.
it does.
Because my first inclination as like a mama bear is
Yeah.
to jump and be like, hey, that's my first instinct
Yeah.
is to say no. Like,
Yeah.
right? Whereas you come at it from a less accusatory
Yep.
approach, which maybe more people can buy into because not everyone wants to just jump in and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, my
fight.
people-pleasing tendencies would be like, oh, I'm not going to say anything
Right,
because
and
that's going to be awkward.
there's
And
also that
now this coach is going to hate my
too.
kid. Now my kid's never going to get playtime. And right?
Right,
Like we
right.
do look out for
Yeah,
number one.
yeah,
The
yeah.
mama
That's-
bear in
that's-
me would go different than the mama bear in you. And so I think we do have to, as a collective, be eyes for each other.
No, but I appreciate that point too
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, it's your kid's coach. It's like maybe I saw something wrong and I shouldn't have said something, and then
Yeah.
you're analyzing it. And
Yep.
there's
But
that.
yeah,
There's
so
that
staying
aspect
curious.
too. Yeah,
I like
the
it.
curiosity.
So yeah, that's curious
And-
to me. Okay, what else?
And one of the pieces that I think we often ignore is that we see weird, right?
Mm,
Oh.
We see weird things
yeah.
and our kids see weird things.
Also
Yes.
true.
And if we made weird an indicator and not something that we
Right.
rejected, if we made weird an opportunity for a kid to say,
Huh.
it was weird that the teacher had lunch just with me
Mhm.
alone in her room today. It's
Mhm.
weird that
Mhm.
the swim coach only has a nickname for me, even though I've
Mhm.
told him I don't like the nickname and he keeps using it and he doesn't respect what I say.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Mhm.
As a parent, I want to build in the Weird-Dar, right? You
like
know, we
that.
sort of have
Yeah.
radar for
Yeah.
other things.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
want you to have a Weird-Dar
I like it.
because the behavior of a predator does not fit. It doesn't fit. We're talking
Mm.
about what fits. So
Right.
I'm teaching my children in our house about pattern recognition,
Hmm.
about it's normal for a mom that you ride home with to, ask you about your day and to compliment something
Right.
maybe that she saw you do at school and bring you home and let you out.
Yeah.
It is not fit for her to take you to the pub and give you a beer and then take you
Right.
home, right?
Yes, yes.
So kids understand what weird is. That's a
Yeah.
language that they already have.
Yeah.
And we as parents have got to get on the same page with our kids because that's going to be how we actually have
Mhm.
a relationship. Protection is
Mhm.
connection. The connection that we are building with our own children to say, oh, I really like the way you handled that situation. Or I really heard you the other day when you brought this up. Predators have ample time.
Yeah.
They have ample time to compliment our kids,
Yeah.
to be online with our kids, to spend physical in-person time with our kids.
Yeah.
If I, as a parent, am unwilling to find time to see my child, to spend time with them, to make them feel like they are a full person in our home, then I'm not tuning into our family wellness plan, right?
And it's
So
and some people don't have
They don't have the
that.
luxury
Like
of that.
I think that I think about the mother, or the single mother, the single parent who is working a few different jobs and is using the aftercare and the pre-care and the neighbor to watch their kids just because she's trying to keep the lights on. She can't. How could she possibly?
And then she's so
I would-
grateful for the adults that are supporting.
Oh, look, my neighbor likes to play basketball with the kids. Great.
Thank God. They're not on the
yes.
screen. They're out playing basketball on the
Look
street.
at that. Or like the swim instructor gave him an extra half hour of a lesson. How lucky am I?
Yeah, 'cause I couldn't afford it otherwise.
Right. And so
Yeah.
there's taking the advantage also of the single mom as well.
Ugh,
And it's so
Yeah.
hard.
so hard.
Well, I think the position that we have to remember that we're in is that we are not alone in this,
Yeah.
right? We have communities, we have families, we have networks of people that we know. So just like we talked about earlier with being on the stands, and if I'm not there because I have to do something or you can't be there, then I'll say, I'll watch your kiddo next, the
Right,
following practice, you watch my kiddo,
Yeah.
etc. We have lost as a world, it seems. I think it's still there, but we don't talk about it as much. We have lost this sense of your child's well-being impacts my child's well-being. So I want to improve and ameliorate your situation so that our whole community can be raised up. When children speak about child sexual abuse, 60% of the time they tell a friend. So I need to empower my children to know what to look for when a kid says, I have a secret. Can you keep this secret? This thing happens to me when I go home. This thing happens to me when my mom's boyfriend comes over. This thing happens to me when I go to my stepdad's house. These are important conversations for us to have with our kids, even if our kids are not being raised in a vulnerable environment, because they're not being raised in a vacuum. They're in community with friends and pals and buses and out of sight from us, which is why we need to teach them about what it means if it's an outlying behavior, if it's a weird behavior. Because the nice thing about what I've learned about grooming is that it's a process. It's like, do either of you bake?
No,
Are you?
God, no.
I've tried. But I understand. I have tried and failed, but I understand.
We can follow along
All
with
right,
the
Yeah, I
analogy.
understand. Things have to rise and chill and set and heat up and,
all the steps.
all the steps.
So one of my favorite things is spanakopita, which is this
yum.
Greek.
Oh,
yeah. I like
feta
to eat
cheese
that.
and
I'll
spinach.
eat
Gorgeous.
it. I wouldn't try and bake that, not if my life depended on it.
And if we look at phyllo dough,
Yeah.
if you were to take it apart,
Right.
it's almost translucent.
Yeah.
It's almost not there.
Yeah.
But it's when you get all those layers together that you get that really gorgeous crunch on baklava or spanakopita.
Yeah.
I want you to think about grooming in the exact same way.
Okay.
In the moment, you might think, oh, well, this is so helpful, or this is an offer to stay late, or this is this one thing that's wonderful. It's when survivors compile everything in hindsight and they say, oh, this was building towards something. So for any parents who are thinking, oh my gosh, I feel worried about the situation, what I want you to be comforted by is the idea that even if grooming has started, you can interrupt the process.
Great.
Because predators always want to fall under the radar.
Yeah.
Their number one goal is to do what they do without being caught,
Right.
without
Do it
people
again.
whispering about them or
Yeah,
talking about them.
Yeah.
And I dealt with multiple offenders who went from school to school to school because it was almost like the scuttlebutt and the whispering and the noise around what they were doing was becoming too loud. So it's not that they stopped their behavior, they just changed their environment.
So they would school hop or pick your
Camp hop, whatever,
institution
wherever
hop
children are.
or church hop or
Sure,
whatever
yeah.
hop or something, community center hop, until it catches up with them or until it gets loud enough that that there's a stop.
Yeah. And this is why we need to educate not just parents, but people who are working in all these agencies.
Yeah.
Because they don't communicate
Yeah.
so well.
and
Teachers
if
will
they didn't-
switch.
Right.
right?
And
Yeah.
a teacher might be nervous about losing their own job. I don't want to
Exactly.
go up against the assistant principal who keeps having all the, girls sitting on their lap or
Yep.
kissing these, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to lose my job. Talk about not getting involved. I don't want to risk my own livelihood as a result of this situation. Yeah.
Anna, what do you think about other trusted adults in our children's lives? So, I often will say to my children, again, as they're in their approaching teenage years, of like, I get that you're not going to want to come to me all the time. So who else would you go to? So I'm always like, okay, of all your aunties and uncles, who are you going to call if you're in an emergency and you don't want to call mom or dad? And we're starting to have those conversations.
Safe, chosen adult.
Yeah,
Safe
but
adults.
now I'm kind of like, oh my God, is anyone safe? I'm freaking out.
No one's
We don't know. There's no safety. But generally speaking, I'm obviously being silly, but like, is that something that we can offer up to our children as like, if you don't want to come talk to me, who else can you talk to? How do you talk to your coaches? How do you talk to your teachers? Like, where can we take that other trusted adult concept and bring it into our day-to-day life?
Yeah, I think that's so important. Developing a safety squad for kids
Safety
so that they
squad.
know
Cute.
when I'm at school, when I'm in activities, when
Right.
I'm in my sport, when I'm at camp, when I'm away from mom and dad, I know exactly who I can go to. And identifying these people, it doesn't need to be 20 people.
Yeah.
It
Right.
needs to be
Yeah.
maybe 2, maybe
Yeah.
3. But as a parent, I'm looking for those relationships. I love mentorship. I think it's critically important. I think part of what we're seeing with the mental health crisis is parents and adults sort of turning their backs on actually intentionally mentoring children.
Yeah.
So I love mentorship,
Yeah.
but I need my mentor to stay in their lane.
Yeah.
I need them to hold and reinforce my principles and my ethics in the work that they're doing with my child. If I catch on any of the flattery, favoritism, forbidden fruits, or fear element, threatening, allowing my child to break rules, keeping secrets, again, going over that secrecy, privacy, surprise
Yes.
differences with my child. If I see indicators of that, then maybe the mentorship is shifting or changing roles in a way that is not conducive to our family wellness, or we've outgrown it. Maybe I need to pull it back. Maybe I need to say, oh, this behavior doesn't fit our expectations. Remember, it's about who we are. It's not about who any one person is.
Right.
So in my household, we wash our hands before we have dinner.
Yeah.
That is about who we are as a family. It's not a judgment about other
Right.
people.
Right.
It is simply the expectations.
Yeah.
So when we have a certain set of standards and my children understand exactly what those standards are, not only for youth and how other kids should be treating them and how they should treat other kids, but how adults should interact. And when those outlying moments happen, whether because a drunk uncle is behaving badly or somebody within an environment is behaving badly, exactly what you talked about, using it as fodder for conversation, fodder for connection. And if you have a child, like I have a child who is less verbal, she doesn't want to talk to me and have a big conversation. And in a household with 5 kids, there's often
She can get away
not
with
a lot
it.
of
Yeah.
silent time one-on-one. So she and I have developed almost like a pen pal system where we have this beautiful journal that goes back and forth. If she has a question about something, an issue came up, something that she needs to discuss with me, she'll write it down and then give it to
Dear
me.
Abby,
So
I'm
when
obsessed with this. Oh
Oh,
my
I
God.
love
when
this.
your audience is thinking like, my kid is not a talker,
Right.
maybe you have a drawing journal that goes back and forth. Oh, here's a picture of what mommy did today. Draw me a picture of something funny or crazy that happened. Again, it's about building connection because connection is protection. The more space that we allow in our households, the more that we are isolated, whether through watching our phones or having our AirPods in and not fully engaging in our relationship. Because again, we are their training wheels and we have to demonstrate on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day, oh, well, this is the expectation and this is our standard because this is how people who respect you treat you. And that's really the whole point about my work right now in pushing this momentum of getting parents to really feel that power and that responsibility and the privilege.
Yes.
It is a privilege to be able to raise these children.
Mhm.
Their childhood only lasts a certain finite amount of time. And if we can do everything we can to make sure that predation is not part of that childhood story, then all the better for it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
I-
so into this convo. We could talk
I
forever.
have one final
okay,
question.
Yeah, we got to wrap it
I
up.
have one final question.
Yeah.
What is your take on sleepovers?
Ooh.
I have wrestled with this topic
Yeah.
with people with
There's a lot of opinions these
there's
days
a lot
about
of opinions
sleepovers.
because I'll never forget. I once watched something online where this father was worked also with kids. I think he was in the mental health world, and he said, my daughter, her whole life, all she did was ask me to go to a friend's house for a sleepover, and I always said no. And when she turned 18, he's like, "What do you want for your birthday?" She's like, "I want to go and have a sleepover with my friends." He's like, "Great, you're 18,
Cute.
you go and enjoy." So she had a sleepover with her friends, and they're all chatting, and they all were sitting around, whatever, and they all around the room all shared how they experienced inappropriate behavior at sleepovers. And she came home and she said to her father, "Thank you, because I didn't."
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And so I was like, whoa,
yeah.
and it sort of changed my whole perspective on sleepovers. I'm not 100% comfortable with them.
Yeah. What do you think?
What do you
Anna?
think?
Well, I'll tell you a little story. One of the offenders I worked with, and we had a long time together. He told me a story about how he coached his son's baseball team. And every month he would host a sleepover for the entire team in his house. And every time he hosted one of these sleepovers, he would wait till all the children were asleep and he would go downstairs and he would try to molest as many kids as he could while they were sleeping.
While they're sleeping.
I want us to think in terms of vulnerability.
Yeah.
A child is at heightened vulnerability when they are in between consciousness. That transition from being awake to being asleep, let me give you a statistic that most people don't understand or don't know. 82% of the time, child sexual abuse happens in these two locations: the home where the child lives or the home where the predator lives. So if I, as a parent, can eliminate 82% of the risk by simply being really steadfast about who's coming into my home and whose homes my children are going into, then by and large, I mean, between that and a little bit of internet management and maybe turning off the internet at night, I can really dodge a lot of this predation stuff. I'm not a huge fan of sleepovers. That is not to say that I will blanketly say nobody can ever have a sleepover. But as a family, your ethos is what rules. Is it part of your ethos? Are you having conversations? Is there a plastic liner on the mattress? Is there a way that if you're in a situation and it gets suddenly deep-endish and you need to find a way out of it, do you have the ability? Do you have the maturity? Do you have the wherewithal? Like we talked about before, this concept that children are meant to get themselves out of a situation by screaming no and running away. It assumes agency. And what we know about children is that they lack agency. And a child of mine over at somebody's house for a sleepover is also lacking that agency. So as much as possible, I want to bolster my child, their awareness of their own their self-reliance, but also that they come from a web of many people through mentors and caring adults and family members and siblings who care about them and who want the best for them. And that out in the world, out in their environment, they may come across people who don't show that same respect. And it will stand out because they experience love and connection and respect inside the home. And that's something that we really can control.
That's a great way of framing it. And I think it's really important, the wording that you choose, which is, this is what our family wellness looks like. It's not a judgment on yours. these are our choices. You have yours. Neither are right nor wrong, but they're right for us. Because I think, too, as parents, as moms, we have a lot of guilt around, are we doing it right? What if they're doing something different?
Susie
I don't
has
know.
this. Susie
Yeah,
went
like,
here. Well, Susie was allowed to do this. Well, and
It's hard.
it's constantly
It's hard.
dealing with that.
But we have to be very firm in what is our family morals, values, mission statement, whatever,
Boundaries.
you think is
Yeah.
appropriate. I love to do an annual mission statement with my family about like, what does our family believe in? What's important to us? What do we care about? And I think that sets them up as well, where if others are not aligning with that, they kind of are like, oh, this is different. I don't know that I like this. Or maybe I do like it more, but that's a whole other story. But it's not about judgment. It's about what does your family feel is appropriate. End of story. It doesn't need to be a negotiation.
Or is it about judge? Because I think it's okay to judge too. I think it's okay to say, I think that's okay. I mean, we're human beings. I think
I don't think we ever
for
need to be
safety.
judging
No,
someone
you
else's
could you could judge
choices.
and say, you know what? That family does things that way. That's not how we do it. That's not how I
But that's not a judgment. That's actually an acceptance. That's how they do it. This is how we do it. Like for you and I, for example, you just said now, or Anna, you've said we don't do sleepovers. That's our family choice. For me as a child, sleepovers saved my life. So for me, I'm like, kids, let's find these amazing group of friends that you can have, that you get to have this incredible experiences.
Right.
Is it risky? Absolutely. Every day I put them on the bus, that's a risk. Every day I send them out, down a ski hill, that's a risk. You have to choose what you're willing to risk, I think, based on our own trauma, our own histories, our own baggage. I think the most important thing is that you're aligned, let's say with your partner, or if you're a single parent, that you feel good about your decision. Because when we're insecure, I think that's when we don't stand up, when we don't speak up, when we think we're going to be judged by other people about the choices that our family makes, that's when we start to shrink and clam up. And I think that's antithetical to what you're saying, is we need all eyes society, baklava, phyllo pastry to be looking out for one another without judgment, but rather with acceptance. So that's my takeaway. Listen, Anna, this is amazing. You are amazing. Everybody needs to read and get Duck, Duck, Groom. That is your baby, your book baby. And you have another one on the way?
I do. I have a book for parents and children to read together about grooming called Wait, That's Weird.
Yes.
Again, we're trying to increase the Weird-Dar for kids. And to tack on to the conversation that you all were just having about judgment, I think the piece is about transitioning from a position of judgment to discernment. And parental discernment is waning, and we need to build it back.
Yeah, that's a much better word.
That's the
that
word
thank you.
Missing.
Yeah.
Yes. And those,
discernment.
and I think this is a conversation that should be had in schools.
Yes.
As well, the whole grooming, because it's not really.
Yeah.
When we talk about inappropriate touching, but it's not quite there.
It's not. Well, I think by the time you get to inappropriate touching, you've missed all of the grooming. So we need to go back. So get Anna's book. Yeah. Read the book. This has been incredible. Thank you
so much for this.
And for the work that you're doing. It's so important. And I feel like this is the resource that so many parents are desperate for, because we don't know. We don't know. And now we do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a dynamic conversation.
So wonderful. We really appreciate you and everything. Thank you so much.
This episode was written and created by Alex Howard and Amanda Silver. Produced, edited, and engineered by RTF Productions. Make sure to rate and review our show if you loved it, and give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast to stay up to date on all upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening, and go easy on us. We're not your ex.